We are live.
Okay. Okay. Once again, I'm going to make sure that I can be through the live stream before we get started with our mayoral debate. Okay. So we will go ahead and get started. Good evening and welcome everyone to the El Paso mayoral debate. My name is Mariana Mesa and I am a member of We Fill in the Blank. We extend a warm welcome to our candidates this evening, Veronica Carbajal, Carlos Gallinar, Calvin Zelsdorf, and Dean Dino Martinez. Candidates were invited to participate in this debate. Before we begin, the Cub Scouts of Troop 29 were very kind in providing a video of the Pledge of Allegiance. Please pause if you're able to for the pledge, which I will go ahead and play right now. Okay, can everyone see my screen? Okay, great.
Loud. What? I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So with that, We Fill in the Blank is a nonpartisan, student-run organization to engaging the youth in their community. Over the past few years, we have hosted countless debates and forums, conducted exit polling, and also participated in breaking with the goal of civically engaging the youth. Our debates are known for employing what is known as the Socratic method. This method is a one-on-one dialogue between the candidate and a moderator. Each candidate will be presented with the same initial question, and from there, the moderator will walk through the candidate's thought process to allow everyone to better understand why the candidates think the way they do, with each of the candidates receiving 10 minutes for this part of the debate. While this is underway, the other candidates will be in a separate breakout room to ensure fairness for all. We would also like to remind the audience that we are simply here to speak on behalf of the community because, especially through a pandemic, we recognize the importance of civic engagement and political discourse. Transitioning a debate onto the virtual format is certainly one of the most effective, albeit newest ways to reach audiences during the COVID-19 era and the 21st century. So with that, we ask that you please be patient regarding any technological issues that may arise. I would like to thank each and every one of the candidates for running, as this act shows that they each have a vested interest in the community. Now I would like to hand it over to one of our members who will introduce our first speaker, Ms. Veronica Carbajal.
And now if all candidates can, of course, go into the breakout rooms. Thank you. Oh my goodness. Don't worry.
Veronica Carbajal is a fourth-generation fronteriza raised in both El Paso and Ciudad Juarez. She graduated from Burgess High School and Brown University in 1998 with a degree in environmental studies and an honors thesis entitled Chicanas and Environmental Justice, which focused on a recycling facility in a racially segregated part of Austin. Afterwards, Vero came home and did an air pollution outreach. She put herself through the University of Texas School of Law by working on environmental toxic tort cases for a private law firm. Vero has been an attorney at Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid Inc. since graduating in 2004. She has defended the rights of the working poor, people with disabilities, people on fixed incomes, and people who have slipped into poverty suddenly due to illness, the economic recession, natural disasters, the mass shooting in 2019, and most recently, the pandemic. She has taken on polluters like ASARCO and El Paso Electric, real estate scammers, slumlords, and even the city of El Paso over its treatment of natural disaster victims, housing discrimination, and its plans to build a sports arena and Granito, a historic neighborhood with a low-income elderly resident. Vero has also collaborated with the city and most recently helped develop its COVID-19 housing assistance program. Vero has been involved with a number of nonprofit organizations and is also a children's book author.
My name is Victor Massa. Thank you so much for joining us, Ms. Carbajal. We really appreciate it, and we'll go ahead and get started. So I'll start off with a very question. As mayor, you have the power to propose. So in a very brief manner, just so we can delve into these topics later on, what are your top 3 legislative priorities?
Legislative in terms of local changes or statewide?
Local.
Excuse me?
Local.
Oh, well, as you all know, one of my priorities is the environment. And so we most definitely need to take on, really review a lot of our existing codes to see how they are facilitating or obstructing environmental issues. And so we think about, for instance, the building code. Is it facilitation of solar panels? Is it facilitating the use of green code building standards? And so that would be one of the first I would look at, because we need to, one, make things as easy as possible. And that's one of the top complaints from people who really want to either have or build new homes within the city limits. And so I want to facilitate that. But more than that, I want to encourage people to think about the environment. And we need to go through our code to see that. Another big issue that comes up in the campaign is the role of the city manager. And so I think that we need to really consider whether we need to change our local charter to what I think is a dire need to rethink the role and the power that we have been giving to the city manager. We have a city manager under contract. The contract was drafted very poorly, in my opinion, and it was slanted towards a city manager. So it makes it very difficult to break out of that. However, the charter does give us authority to remove the position completely or remove the city manager that we have now. But how that dovetails or conflicts with the contract is that issue. And so that's one of the things that I would want to do, is to make sure that the chart is very specific about the role of the city manager and what we can do via the contract that we have. And then the third issue that we can address through legislature, although I am a big animal rights activist, as some of you all may know, and there is still a lot of ambiguity with the way that people can breed animals and sell animals. And so I would really tighten those rules up. And the reason that I'm really concerned about that issue, and just in general, we know that especially through the pandemic, our animals have been extremely valuable to so many of us. But there's also the issue of domestic violence and how it ties into animal abuse. And so a lot of times, we have activities that relate to animal abuse that affect other societal issues.
Yeah, so let's take a look at that first topic you mentioned, which was, of course, the environment and climate change. So you mentioned, that we need to review our existing codes. What do you mean by our existing codes?
So I actually met with someone just yesterday about what it takes to build something within the city, right? One of my concerns is that I really want us to take advantage of infill, and that's going to be vacant land within the city limits, but to do it in a way that's congruent with my other housing plans, which are to not gentrify and to not push people out of communities. And so when I think about, well, what are we going to build? This builder in particular was just telling me how there is no congruency between the building codes. So you have the International Building Code, you have other standards, and so it takes a very long time to get all of those permits. And it seems that there's also a lack of, and this goes beyond the legislative process, there's also a lack of training of the actual inspectors. So if you get one inspector to stop by and tell you need to fix these deficiencies, next week, whoever does the follow-up inspection is going to say, actually, those things were not necessary, but I found 3 other things that you need to fix. So I think that just in general, the way that inspections are done has to be changed. And so that's what I'm talking about in terms of the incongruency between the codes. The other issue is that, to their understanding, and I need to confirm that this is true, the ADA, meaning the American with Disabilities Act, is not built in or written in to the code. That means that you could build something brand new in 2020, and it could violate the ADA rules because you were not notified that you had to build to code. So someone could sue you later because it's not accessible to them or to their disability. So I want to make sure that we're thinking about the green issue as well as just general construction issues, but also in terms of people with disabilities, so we're not leaving anyone out.
So you say that we need to, change the way that inspections work. I know that you mentioned a little of what they look like right now. What are you proposing they look like?
So at Legal Aid, I've had the opportunity to streamline our systems. So at Legal Aid, we have, for instance, a hotline. You can apply in person. But what happens is sometimes people get lost in the shuffle. And so what we've been able to do as part of my team is to make sure that people don't get lost. And so they have one person that they go to if they have a question. That person decides what kind of priority it is and then refers to someone else to deal with it. And that's what you need, right? You always need to have it. One, you need to have a system that's very easy to access. Our permitting office right now is only downtown. We should have satellite offices. The second thing is that we want to make sure that all of the employees, from the receptionist to the actual inspectors, understand the process and understand how to look things up. So it could be that maybe there's an issue with the way the systems are placed into the communications network that they have, so that anyone could be able to look at a permit and where they are in the permitting process, so that you have people entering logs or notations on that one case. It's electronically available so that anyone, even on the field, can look and say, oh, so-and-so inspector was here 2 days ago on these two issues. Now I'm here. Let me look at them and confirm whether they've been addressed or not. So that's what I'm talking about. Just making sure that there aren't any gaps in communications. That's number one with any entity that requires a number of different people to look at the same problem.
What evidence do you have? Well, first of all, sorry, it's past the 5-minute mark. But what evidence do you have that such clarity of such inspections leads to just generally a higher quality of the environment here in El Paso?
Well, a few years ago, I had to sue the city over an issue involving the Fair Housing Act and the construction of a house, and it was part of their housing program. So this is a house that was rebuilt because the other house was not habitable. My client had a forgivable loan with the city. What we found is that even though the city, our position was that even though the city knew that there was a person with disabilities in the house, they did not build a house to the ADA code. And so the house was not accessible to them. And yet they were paying for it through this forgivable loan. And so I think that's my an example of how things are not working and why they need to be changed so that we have congruity.
All right. So now let's move on to that second topic you mentioned, which is obviously the role of the city manager and the powers that they hold in relation to elected officials. So I guess first of all, what powers and specifically would you say that that they shouldn't hold or that they should hold in relation to other elected officials?
Well, right now, for instance, the city manager is in charge of the police department. They're also in charge of the COVID response. And so a lot of issues that are really important to the community are not being decided upon by the city council or the mayor. It's also my understanding that the city manager has a lot of contact with certain people in the community who can just make a call and get some things done instead of having to go through the steps that the rest of us have to follow. So I think that there seems to be a lot of authority and not enough supervision of what the general manager does on a day-to-day basis and who he is talking to. Because he's not an elected official, he is not held accountable the way that other people are. I mean, he doesn't have to follow the same rules of ethics that the rest of us do, for instance. So I think the concern that I have just from watching city council over the years, especially during the pandemic, is the fact that this administration in particular has given a lot of deference to the city manager. And his recommendations are basically rubber stamped by the mayor almost all the time. And so I think that's a problem in leadership style, but it's also reflective of the fact that the manager is, being allowed to run the city, and that's not what the intention was. My understanding was when we voted for that position, it was because city members and the mayor were not earning enough money to be full-time elected officials. that's no longer the case. That means that the city manager's office should not hold as much power and should not, be able to make many decisions. It also means that city reps and the mayor need to be a lot more involved with these decisions and the research behind them, which they don't tend to do.
All right, and you mentioned the idea of accountability, transparency within the city government. Are there ever any instances where the city government shouldn't be transparent?
As a lawyer, I can tell you, yes, there are definitely issues of confidentiality, issues of trademark, issues of contract terms. If you're negotiating with certain, third parties, that you want to keep some of that deal under wraps until it's fully completed. But I think it's rare, and I think that as a city, we need to strive for accountability and transparency at every opportunity. And what that means is that we should not be asking the Attorney General for an opinion every single time the media is asking for information that's useful to the public. We do not, we should always, as an attorney, I always focus on what's in my client's best interest. And as mayor, my clients will be the entire citizenry of El Paso. That is number one. Not some private interest, not a business that's trying to keep things under wraps, not someone who's afraid of us disclosing the clusters at their location. That is secondary. Our first and foremost obligation is to keep the public safe and to make the best use of the public funds.
All right. Well, those are the 10 minutes. Thank you so much. You should get an invitation to join a breakout room, and we'll just have you in there until the town hall. Thank you so much.
Oh, she's a cute little girl. She's so cute. Look at her. I think I got my mic off or not? Yeah, it's on.
Okay, so Dino Martinez Sr. is currently running for mayor of our great city of El Paso. He is an ex-airborne ranger with the U.S. Army, 101st Airborne Division. He retired from DOD at White Sands Missile Range. He is a people person who loves to talk to the people and listen to their needs. He wants to be that mayor this great city needs. He the people.
Yes, amen. Amen.
Good afternoon, Mr. Martinez. My name is Andrea Valise, and I will be your moderator for today. It's a pleasure and an honor. So if I'm ready and you're ready, let's jump into it, shall we? So as a mayor, we know they have the power to propose legislation towards the city council. As a mayor, what would your top 3 priorities be to propose legislation?
My topic is to turn around and see that the issues that it had, that are happening at this time, that we work on those issues. Because you see, if we don't do anything, they just, how can I say, they domino effect. It starts to affect the other areas. So instead of looking at the cost effective of what we would have spent to turn around and take care of that and handle that, it's usually the small things that build up to make up the big things. It's very important that we attack each issue as we have that chance. That is possible, having everybody work together to make it happen. The one person can't do it alone, because I may see something from one side, somebody else is going to see it differently from another side. For instance, here you have workers, and here you have issues where we have a time element of when this thing gets done. If it doesn't, it starts to now cost. It starts to build the interest on that one problem. I hope I answered that well.
Mr. Martinez, when you bring up the topic of issues and problems, can you specify or go in depth about what you mean by that?
Well, issues usually comes in with you have your people that you work with, or council, or media, and then you have your constituents. And usually it's, how can I say, like Burger King. You can't always have it your way, you know? Yeah, I'm a Burger King kind of guy. I like to build up my burger. What I do is consequently turn around and point out an issue is a situation that needs to be looked at. It's not something to look away because it just jumped up. It's like a pimple on the face. Oh, how are you going to get rid of it? Don't mess with it. Just put.
Could you kind of give problems that the community of Paso and your constituents are facing? 3 of them.
That question is, do I know of problems that are happening with my constituents?
Mm-hmm. Since you want to solve problems and issues towards your constituents, could you kind of name some of those problems?
Well, some of those problems happen to be with the street. We had problems with streets and our roads. The state of Texas, for the longest time, did not help out El Paso, Texas. Money back then, I remember when I was 12 years old, back in '66, the money was going, it seems like it was going out of the state, but it wasn't. It was not helping El Paso at all. We were looked at like we weren't even counted, but yet they could take our money and use it for themselves. Eventually, that money on TxDOT finally came this way. But you see, it's our alderman who's in charge of that area needs to turn on and stay on bound of what's going on, because then you start picking up, like I said, if you don't take care of it, it causes a domino effect, and you start now having potholes. You see what I mean? What potholes do is they ruin tires, they ruin your suspension, and they also pop up rocks and hit somebody else from behind. So these things need to be taken care of, and finally somebody start to do something about it. As a mayor, I don't like seeing things like this that are being overlooked and left behind.
So would you say that you would propose legislation to kind of fix the infrastructure of El Paso?
Well, see, I worked with the engineering section for the longest time with the Department of Defense. Excuse me. And my thing was we had to stay on top of the issue because, you see, those were the most important, especially areas where we worked with areas that were crucial to us, such as missiles, areas, or how can I say, stuff I can't really talk about that work on our missiles. And if that hits the ground in the wrong way and spills over, we got a hazmat issue. So those areas have to be first and primary. They have to be taken care of. But not only that, but we also have a fireman and a security that work in those areas that we can't afford to turn around and see something happen.
Okay, so Mr. Martinez, let's kind of jump into the topic of the city budget. What are your views on the current city budget?
Right now, I think we need to hold on to what we got and not start spending.
Define what you mean by hold on to what we got.
Well, let's say we have about $800 million. We should not be able to spend that $800 million as we did before the COVID. We don't have our economy generating money so we can continue on keeping at least a level of so much money to keep the city operating in all its services that we receive, such as garbage, water, sewage, stuff like this, utilities. We need to keep our lights and traffic lights going, our street lights going, things like this. If we fall below it, we're not going to have these services. If we spend too much and not watch what we're doing, we're going to be a city in the dark.
Can you kind of specify what services you mean by the ones that we need?
Well, like I was saying, have you ever had a stopped up toilet and you can't use it? Have you ever had a kitchen sink where you can't wash dishes? Have you had a point where you can't take a shower because there's no water? You see, these are important and these are essential. Back then, well, there was, back in 2013, we had a mayor, his name was Cook. And we went into a blackout in El Paso. And it's the first time I noticed that we ever went to a blackout that we could not have our services done. You see, the water and gas run on that electricity. There was 10 generators out there at the Newman plant. They're supposed to be brand new, and only 2 were servicing to all of El Paso. To me, that was absurd. That should not have happened. We paid good money to keep these things going, especially to keep El Paso operating. That's why back then I decided to run as mayor, to make sure that we stay on top, to turn around and service our people of the city.
So compared to the current city budget of El Paso, do you think there should be a more allocation of resources in different sectors or less in sectors?
Like I said, it depends in the areas that's most needed, that are crucial.
So what areas to you are most crucial?
What areas? Well, 911. Fire
Can
department.
you kind of go into depth of 911?
Well, let's say you have somebody that's robbing your house, or you have a domestic fight that's going on, father or brother, or somebody that's threatening the lives of the people in that residence. Or let's just say you have a break-in and you're alone and somebody's breaking into your house. See, we need those services that are essential to helping out, to having this, keeping this going, operating.
Could you kind of list more services that you're considering El Paso may need?
We have the fire department. Somebody's choking. Somebody's bleeding. The fire department, or you got a wreck, a car wreck. They're right there and then. The fire department is somebody that really goes beyond the call of duty to help us residents and everyone else throughout the United States.
So kind of compared to right now, how would your legislation be different from what the mayor of El Paso is doing right now?
Well, that's good that you brought that up, because I have a big heart for those who have experienced the job of a mayor or a congressman or a senator, because you have to fit in somebody's shoes, somebody's big shoes to fit into them. You have to have something that you're made out of, that you can lead, not follow, that you are the head and not the tail, that you have had something in this area that can do that work. For the last 28 years before my retirement, I handled 5,056 people. I am a leader. I am an airborne ranger. I have served with the best. So my thing is, give me a chance. Let me show you what I can do for this city.
And lastly, to finish off, Mr. Martinez, what are your thoughts on transparency within city government?
I believe that everybody needs to be transparent. Their integrity is the most important, so that you see the truth and not lies. Nothing that's going to be under the table. Everything must be seen. It must be known to those who are paying taxes. They must know what's happening with their money. They must know what's going on with projects. They must know what's going on with the cities, their schools. You know, Paso Independent School District or SLED, things like this. What about hospitals? What are we doing right now under these circumstances under COVID? How are we able to help? How is it that we can turn around and separate the bad things, which is not important, and I mean things that don't work, for the great things that can help all of us?
And that about wraps up our 10-minute session, Mr. Martinez. I thank you, and you'll be invited into a breakout room.
Bless you, Andrea. Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor.
Okay. Carlos was born and raised in El Paso's Lower Valley. His mother, Nelly, was a housekeeper, and father, Jose Luis, was a maintenance worker who moved to El Paso from Ciudad Juarez in 1970 to seek a better life for his family. His story is not unique. It is one that he shares with thousands of El Pasoans. Carlos has spent the past 20 years dedicating his life to public service in El Paso. His work has included community and economic development at La Fe Clinic and increasing affordable housing options, such as the first mixed-income mixed-use housing development through McGoffin Villas. He believes cities can work for people. He has also worked on community master plans, modernizing school facilities, and international philanthropic work. For the last 3 years, he has managed and started a small business, Gallinar Planning and Development, focusing on community development and urban planning. It is his continued goal to improve the quality of life for all El Pasoans through a more sustainable and healthier city. As mayor of El Paso, Carlos will work to create high-wage jobs for working families, to combat the climate crisis and invest in solar and renewable energy, and to speak up for our border community. Carlos is married to Janie, a social worker and mental health professional. They met while both volunteering at Annunciation House, an immigrant shelter and refugee advocacy center. They live in El Paso's historic Sunset Heights neighborhood with their 2 young children.
All right, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Gallinar, and we'll go ahead and get started. So the first, I'll just jump right in. As mayor, you obviously have the power to propose legislation. So what would be, please really briefly, so we can get to a lot more things during the 10 minutes, what are your top 3 legislative priorities?
Tell me your first name again, because I can't see it on the Zoom, so I could call you by your first name.
Victor.
Victor. Hey, Victor. So first of all, thank you and everyone else at We Fill in the Blank for allowing me the opportunity to be here. Victor, first and foremost, we need to get out of COVID. Just today, we saw that we are at over 500 new cases, the worst day that we have seen since this pandemic started. So we need to make sure that people are safe and healthy and that we get people back to work. It's going to take some leadership at City Hall. But first and foremost, we're not going to do anything of the other things that we're going to talk about if we can't get out of COVID. Number 2, I want to make sure that we start moving towards the direction of increasing wages. We know that more people are in El Paso than any other city in the United States. We know that wages are stagnant. And so if we are going to compete in the 21st century against all these other cities, we need to make sure that people have jobs and good paying jobs. And that starts, as the young lady mentioned, with solar and renewable energy, high-tech manufacturing. And then number 3, Victor, I want to move towards making us healthier and happier. I have proposed creating regional hike and bike trails that are connecting the neighborhoods that we all live in to our beautiful Franklin Mountains and then connecting them all the way down to the Mission Trail. This will, again, make us healthier and happier, have people be outdoors. And then we'll also invite people to come visit El Paso and spend money here in the local economy. So those are the 3 major things that we have to look at. There's many more, but the big ones that I think over the course of my tenure as mayor, if I'm lucky to get elected, those are the things that we need to work on.
All right, so let's take a look at your first pick, which was to get out of COVID. First of all, what do you mean by getting out?
Hey, Victor, so listen, it means that we decrease the number of infections. It means that we decrease the number of people dying. It means that we decrease the positivity rate. And so, again, we're at over 10% positivity rate. I just mentioned we're at over 500 new cases, the worst day since March, since we started tracking this pandemic. I get it. I think your question relates to, it's not just unique to El Paso, right? It's unique to the U.S., the world. But I think that locally should be doing to lessen the curve and make sure that people are safe and healthy.
So what are those things?
So lead by example, right? Going to not be wishy-washy about directives. We need a mayor that's going to say, hey, listen, if you are in not abiding by the order, whether you're a restaurant or a bar or establishment or a business, you will get cited. This is wishy-washy on whether they will or will not enforce the order. Number 2, let's make sure, again, as I mentioned, that we're leading by example. If as mayor, anywhere that I will go, I need to wear a mask. I need to be social distancing. I need to be washing my hands. I need to be more proactive and more diligent in making sure that citizens understand the cautionary things that they need to do to lessen the curve. And then number 3, listen, I'm not going to let Abbott dictate what the city should be or should not be doing. As mayor, my first priority will be the safety and well-being of Pasoans, right? If there are things that I don't agree with Abbott, I will let him know. Start mandating masks, or starting with making sure that our kids go back to school in a safe environment. There's many things that I believe this governor has done wrong, and as mayor, I first and foremost will take care of El Pasoans as their being and well-being.
And so, as mayor here in El Paso, actual powers do you have in relation to getting out of COVID?
Yeah. So again, everything that I just mentioned, I believe that as mayor, one sets the culture, one sets the leadership style, one sets the message. Right. Obviously, we're seeing that now with this mayor. When the mayor speaks, people listen. And so, number one, again, you have the microphone, you have the leadership role to make sure that you are providing directives to the citizens of El Paso. And number 2, I also believe that as mayor, he or she should convene all the stakeholders, right? Yes, we have the public health department, and we have Dr. Ocaranza as the public health authority. But I also believe that the mayor could wield a little bit more influence and a little bit more inspiration in terms of how we manage our lives through this pandemic. And then finally, again, I think that as we draw down resources from the national level, that the mayor is doing everything possible to advocate for as many resources as needed to make sure, again, that we get out of this pandemic safely and in a better place.
And what do you mean by resources?
Funding, financial resource, right? We want to make sure that we are getting all the financial resources we possibly need for small businesses, for PPE, for school districts, right? So we want to make sure that as we are getting out of this pandemic and getting through this pandemic, that we are providing our families, our small businesses, our children, our citizens, all the available resources that they need to be made whole again.
All right, so let's move on to the second topic you mentioned, which was to increase wages. Can you expand a little more what you mean by this, and exactly how you would increase?
Yeah, Victor. So one of the things that you mentioned in the introduction of my life, right? So my mom was a housekeeper. My dad was a janitor at a lumberyard. And Victor, the only time that my parents got a raise in their paycheck was when the federal government gave them one. And so we know that for a long time, El Paso has been sold as a low-wage city. We know that for a long time, El Paso has been at the bottom of competitiveness, right? It's gotten a little bit better. Let's be fair, and let's be honest about our circumstance. It has gotten better over the past, 20 years. But over the past 8 years, through these two mayors, it seemed to have gone down again. Again, we're losing more people than any other city in the United States. Victor, you as a student at Coronado or a high school student, I was just talking to your colleague here, Pauline. You're going to leave El Paso, and you're not going to come back, because once you go to college and once you get the training that you need, there's not a job for you here. And so we need to start increasing wages. First and foremost, I get it, not everybody should go or goes to college, right? So in terms of higher wages, let's start with $15 minimum wage. Let's make sure that we're advocating for a livable wage so that people have a little bit more money to pay their rent or their mortgage, healthcare, groceries, and have a little bit of disposable income to generate money in the local economy. I'm happy to pause there because there's some other initiatives that I want to talk about, but I'll pause there so that you could ask your other question.
I was just going to ask, as mayor, what impact can you actually have on increasing wages and to get people to stay in El Paso?
Yeah, so on the wages, and it's a great question, right? So yeah, listen, as mayor, I cannot wave a magic wand or sign an ordinance that says everyone in El Paso is going to get $15 an hour. But what I mean is there's 3 ways that we could get there. One, let's advocate for one at the federal level. Obviously, it's a federal minimum wage. I will work with our Congresswoman Escobar, who, by the way, is supporting our campaign and has endorsed our campaign. And she needs to partner at City Hall. So anytime that the mayor of El Paso needs to go up to Washington, D.C. to advocate for working families and raising the minimum wage, Carlos Gallinar will be there. That's number one. Number two, at the state level, currently the state legislation does not allow local municipalities like El Paso to set our minimum wage like other cities across the country. So I will work with our state delegation to give local municipalities the ability to set our own minimum wage when it comes to our local economy. If we turn Texas blue come November 3rd, it's going to be much easier. If Texas stays red, I get it, right? I just talked about the governor. I just talked about Abbott. It's going to be much harder. That's number two. Number three, we could start here locally with our own budget. And so what I will do is I will look at the staffing table, Victor, of every employee at City Hall. I guarantee you that there's quite a full list of employees that are not at $15 an hour. Maybe they're at $10.25. Maybe they're at $12 an hour. A lot of them are maintenance workers, laborers, custodians, right? So let's get them up to $15 an hour. Let's do it incrementally so that we don't take a big hit to the city budget at once, right? So again, if Victor, as an example, is earning $12 an hour, let's get Victor to $15 an hour over the course of 3 years. First year, $1 increase. Second year, $2 increase. Third year, another $1 increase to get you to $15 an hour. Want to make sure we're being responsible with the city budget. But I also believe that if we're going to get ahead and we're going to be a culture of innovativeness and a city that's going to fight for everyone, we need to raise the standard in the amount of money that people should be earning.
All right. And in relation to your last topic, you did mention that part of it was inviting people to, visit El Paso, tourism. Really quickly, there's less than a minute left, but what resources can El Paso offer?
I didn't hear the last part of your question. What can El Paso offer?
What resources can El Paso offer?
Hey, listen, we are blessed with resources, right? One of the things that I love most about living here is the mountains and the Chihuahuan Desert and the Rio Grande and our proximity to Mexico and New Mexico. We just need to monetize them, right? We just need to make them available for our own sake. Those of us who have chosen to live here, we need to have those recreational opportunities, hike and bike trails throughout El Paso. We could get there. The Arroyo. What's that?
What evidence do you have that monetizing, the Franklin Mountains will lead to more tourism?
So you look at many cities in Colorado. You look at many cities in Utah. You look at many cities in Northern California, cities in New Mexico. You look at cities in Arizona, right? Many cities around that have the natural beauty have made an economy out of those things, right? We took our kids to the Grand Canyon. We take our kids to Tucson. We take our kids to Colorado for hiking. We need, and I can guarantee you, El Paso has many more beautiful assets than those other cities that I just mentioned or regions that I just mentioned. And so there could be an economy there. And again, if we utilize our
the time is over. I do apologize for that.
It's okay.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gallinar. We want to be fair, so
really appreciate it. No problem. So what do I do now? Do I leave?
Yeah, there should be an invitation to the breakout room.
Calvin Zelsdorf was born in Germany, and his family moved back to El Paso when he was 3 months. Both parents attended Eastwood High School. He graduated from Cathedral High School and Texas A&M University with a degree in leadership, education, and communication. He served our beautiful city through the El Paso Fire Department for just under 9 years. He earned his paramedic, swift water, and rope rescue certs, among others. For mayor to change the way the city operates and move our city towards the future in big energy production and our outdated infrastructure.
Good afternoon, Mr. Zelsdorf. My name is Andrea Valise, and I will be your moderator for today. If I'm ready and you're ready, let's get started, shall we? So, starting off with the first question, as a mayor, you're able to propose legislation towards the city council. What would your top 3 priorities be for proposing legislation?
My top 3 legislation options would be to look at all the departments and try to figure out a more efficient way to run them. I think there's a lot of excessive spending, and I think we need to stop that. Another legislation I want to bring forward is the district projects, where every district would get allotted an X amount of money for a project that they think that their district needs, and these projects would be designed and built by those that live within that district. My third legislation would be to remove our current city attorney, replace her with somebody that's more efficient at their job and knows how to do their job correctly. And I would definitely move to get Tommy Gonzalez on board with what we want to do and give him a better sense of leadership.
So let's kind of dive into your first legislation. When you say departments, can you specify what kind of departments?
Well, specifically, I mean, all of them, really. As an example, for the fire department, which I was a part of, most of the time, firefighters stay, or anybody that gets employed by the fire department stays on for 24 plus years. While I understand it is a career, I think that is I think we could help more people get the opportunity to go through the fire department if we cut down the years of requirement down to 8. That would help 3 instead of 1 over the 24 years span. And as the program goes through, more of our citizens would be better adapted to emergencies that we come across. They would know how to respond in emergencies. They would be able to provide assistance to those that are in those emergencies. And yeah, I think, with that 8-year, you would have a $200,000 severance package. My original idea was to try to get people to have a house paid off, within 8 years, and leave the fire department with a trade of their choosing, whether that be electrician or anything. And that would help provide that would make our city more, I guess, what am I trying to say? More educated, right, in skills, and that would actually, in my mind, that would bring more companies here, because now more of our civilians know how to do those trades.
So when you say you want to cut excessive spending in these departments, where would you want to implement more money towards, or allocate more money towards?
Well, definitely with the police department. I mean, I know there's like a lot of back and forth on what the funding means, whether it's, destroying the whole department or, removing some of the special teams or specialties within that department. I have a a relative that's part of the crisis intervention team, and she says that, they're helping the police department a lot, having to prevent officers having to, spend a lot of time on scene during those calls. But she definitely said that they could use more. And so that's definitely one area that I would push some of that money to.
So kind of going into your second district projects, could you kind of define what district projects are?
Sure. These district projects would, all of them would have to produce a certain amount of renewable energy. And whether that be like, an awning over the playgrounds, not just those fabric ones that get torn up whenever we get winds and then we have to spend money to replace that again. Depending on, and to help with the brain drain that everybody says we have in this city, it's really up to whoever's just designing the project. That could be, an awning over an intersection with the street probably 50 yards from the intersection, having like wireless charging for electric vehicles. Now, I know that's not quite here yet, but I don't see why we couldn't be prepared or start moving that way.
And for your last point of analysis, removing the city attorney, could you kind of explain in depth why you would want to remove the city attorney?
Yes. I attended a city council meeting where one of the city council members asked her directly whether the land swap would continue if Great Wolf Lodge didn't come in here. And she was like adamant about the land swap not happening. Well, we didn't get Great Wolf, and the land swap went through. So, and I don't know if you guys know, I think it was like 15 acres for 2,500 acres in the Northeast. And so I don't know, the property, the 15 acres was on the west side right next to I-10, but 2,500 acres, I mean, I don't know who allowed that to happen. And it's not like the land swap was between somebody that was, from El Paso and could use the business. It was to a very wealthy developer that's in the top 500 of Forbes. So,
what do you plan on doing in order to kind of remove the city attorney and gaining the support of the people to kind of vote with you?
Well, I mean, as I mentioned about the land swap, then and they haven't touched too much on what happened with the District 4 representative and how he, got in trouble with the law and wife and everything like that. But it seems to me that the city attorney doesn't hold anybody accountable for anything. I mean, they're kind of, in all honesty, it seems like they're all behind one mission and they're all sticking to it no matter what happens. And I don't think that's what we need. And at the same time, we allowed this contract for Tommy Gonzalez to be, all for him, no matter if, and that's why I need to make sure that we work with him, because if we tried to get rid of him, he would take all of his money and we would just lose all that money for no return. And I think that would be a waste. So yeah. And then, we would need to get an environmental lawyer to get on board with us, because we're going to be pushing for renewable energy. I mean, we're too big of a city and we have too much growth in renewable energy not to go for that.
How would you kind of plan on working with him?
Working with the city attorney?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, kind of like what I was saying, we need to get behind one mission, but I'd be very clear if any of us are making a mistake, you need to hold us accountable, and they need to, follow the law.
So when you kind of bring up accountability, it kind of brings me back to transparency. So what are your thoughts of transparency within city government?
The current transparency?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know if you've ever been to a city council meeting, but a majority of the time, they take the public opinion and then they go into executive decision, and nobody knows what they talk about except for them. And then they come out and they almost always vote against the citizens' opinion. So I think there's a huge lack of transparency. We don't know, Chief Allen didn't have to talk about how he treated those protesters in Memorial Park. Well, the city attorney lied to everybody and she wasn't held accountable. Tommy Gonzalez nobody even knows what he tells the departments, because the city council has to go through him to get any answers from the departments. And I think that's, we've all heard the phone game, and when you add more people on the line, the story changes. And so, I don't think that our transparency in the current city council is very clear at all.
So do you think that at times a city government shouldn't be completely transparent with its constituents?
No, I think it should always be transparent. I mean, there's a big debate on, how the mayor is withholding the information on hotspots for COVID-19 throughout the city. And he swears by the Texas AG that we can't give out any names. And when I was on the fire department, I understand HIPAA, and I don't think we're asking for specific names of individuals or even businesses, but you should be able to at least tell people, hey, and at the intersection of Mesa and Kirby, there's a business, or there's multiple businesses with a big breakout. with a big outbreak, you know? And so I think if they just gave us some kind of clue of where to kind of avoid for a little while, and at the same time, it's not to shame any of the businesses, but maybe hold them a little bit more accountable. So I think it should always be there should always be transparency from the city council to its constituents. I mean, we are elected officials.
I'm sorry, Mr. Zelsdorf. It brings us to the end of our 10-minute session. You should be getting an invite towards a breakout room. Thank you so much. Politics. It's a group of kids coming together from different. We Fill in the Blank is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that aims to engage the youth in the world of politics. It's a group of kids coming together from different high schools across El Paso to step into their communities and really make that sort of difference and change that we've never really seen.
Hi, my name is Mariana Mesa, and to me, We Fill in the Blank is an outlet which I can use to engage in political discourse and at the same time engage civically and provide members of my community with the information they need to be able to make reasonable decisions about the people they are electing.
Hi, my name is Dina Antoine. I'm a senior in high school, and I've been in We Fill in the Blank for 3 years, give or take. It's definitely been a crazy journey, but I really don't think there's any way to fully express the extent to which We Fill in the Blank has impacted me as a student and as an individual. Whether it was working with the organization to develop the multitude of different programs we offer, whether it was Borderized, which worked to engage middle schoolers and high schoolers, or whether it was Breaking Apathy, which worked to engage the youth, the actual students, and get them civically involved, or have them understanding what civic engagement is and what it means, to the debates that we do, the debates that we put on to help raise local awareness and education concerning our representatives and the representatives of our city. We Fill in the Blank has overall just given me the opportunity to look more holistically at the community here in El Paso and to ultimately just offer me insight into the actual impact that I can make onto people. It's very complicated, and I don't know if I'm expressing it in the right way, but truly, We Fill in the Blank has not only given me the opportunity to get involved within my community, but it's given me a family for life and people that I can look to for whatever I may need and whatever I may need help with. And it's just a working environment where I can grow and prosper as a student and as an actual facilitator of different events. So that's what We Fill in the Blank means to me.
Hey y'all, my name is Danae and I recently joined We Fill in the Blank. I've had such a great experience in it so far and I've made many friends. I've learned so much about politics. I understand now why we need to engage and inform the youth in politics. Everyone in it is wonderful and we all work together to get things done.
We are we.
We are We Fill in the Blank.
We are We Fill in the Blank.
Okay, I believe we are live. So welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for staying with us. So we are about to move on to the town hall portion of our debate. So before we get started, we please ask that any audience members watching through YouTube or Twitter, please submit any questions, general questions you may have for the candidates, so that we can incorporate as many audience questions as possible. We already have a few collected from the YouTube chat, but the more we can get, the better. So please be submitting them. We will be paying attention to what you guys are saying. So right now, for each questions, the candidates are going to get 1 minute if they are the first responder to the question. And then as we move on in an A, B, C, D order, the rest of the candidates are going to get 30 seconds. I will prompt each of the candidates with their allotted time when it is their turn, just to make sure there's no confusion. And our moderators for the Socratic debate will also be providing the questions from the audience for this part of the town hall debate. So the order, just to go over it again, candidate A is Mr. Zelsdorf, candidate B is Ms. Carbajal, candidate C is Mr. Martinez, candidate D is Mr. Gallinar. So let's go ahead and get started with question 1, starting with Mr. Zelsdorf. Victor, Andrea, do you guys want to ask the first question?
So the first question comes from audience member Jasmine Flores, who asks, how can El Paso with any candidate slow the brain drain for careers outside of STEM?
Okay, so Mr. Zelsdorf, you now have 1 minute to respond to the question.
Thank you. That's a great question. And I know a lot of people are going to say, we need to bring in bigger companies, but I have a plan to have district projects that are going to be designed and built by those that live within those districts. And this will give the opportunity for those that just graduated college to, flex their brain muscle and see what they can come up with. And all of these district projects are going to have, requirements for renewable energy and also a purpose for the district within itself. So while I can't promise to slow it down or stop, I can at least offer options for those that want to try to give their hand or give their try at these district projects.
All right, our next speaker will be Ms. Carbajal. You have 30 seconds to respond. Oh, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry. Just this week, the city, announced another warehouse set of jobs, and I think that, without getting too much into the weeds about that issue, I think that we need to really, really focus our tax incentives on helping people who have come out of STEM type of programs from our schools and to help them become either, help with them with incubation projects, help them with shared spaces, help them whatever it is that they need help with, including the fact that the city is in a great position to apply for grants from foundations to help them. Thank you.
All right, our next speaker will be Mr. Martinez. You have 30 seconds to answer.
Okay, we have right now some of the things that are important, pertinent. I would like to get some of our students from high school and college to ride along with the police department and get an idea of what's going on. Not only that, but I also want them to get into the government, of how the government is run here in El Paso, Texas. And that's, to me, is most important, so they get an idea, heads up, of what's going on into the next line of life, which is themselves, the next leaders. Thank you.
All right, and our last speaker for this question will be Mr. Gallinar. You have 30 seconds.
Can I ask you to repeat the question, please? If you don't mind. Andrea, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so how do you, I'm sorry, how can El Paso, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
I thought, is it jobs outside of STEM? That's the only clarification that I need. Yes, got it. Okay, so listen, let's start with $15 an hour so that those folks that may not, that need to start working families, let's make sure we start with $15 an hour. That's number one. Number two, let's make sure that we have a vibrant quality of life. Listen, everybody now, especially nowadays, are looking at a city and where they want to live. So let's start with hike and bike trails that are going to make us happier and healthier. Let's make sure we have a quality of life in which everyone can participate. And number 3, let's make sure that we have a government where people feel proud to have a mayor that's going to stand up for them. Feel proud to have a city council for them. Thank you.
All right, we will now move on to our second question, if one of our moderators wants to read it.
So Veronica Villanueva asks this from the YouTube live stream. How do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process of our town?
Okay, so for this question, we will begin with Ms. Carbajal. You have 1 minute to respond.
Thank you. So I am big on listening to people and also on having working sessions. Actually, if you know me, you know I don't like having meetings. I like having working sessions. And I know the city has done these in the past. They're called charrettes. People have called them charades because none of that info is actually implemented. It might make it to the plan, but it's not actually part of the execution of the plan. And so I want the public, especially the neighborhood associations, to be involved with every part of the plan. We know that, for instance, many Black El Pasans were upset about the city putting forth some, ordinance about, or there's some positions already on what they want to do with the racial profiling by police department, and they were not incorporated from the very beginning. And so for me, I would like to have an outline of a plan, and then I want to incorporate the leadership and the community members so that they can help us design that plan. And then the execution of the plan is also going to have a lot of public input so that we get things done the right way.
Okay. So we will now move on to Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez, you have 30 seconds.
Well, that's not too much time. Anyway, listen, when we have a problem, listen to ourselves right here. How great this problem is being situated. Everybody has great ideas. But this is how El Paso should be when it comes down to our churches, when we go shopping, when it comes to police, when it comes to the firemen, when it comes down to hospitals. People need to get involved. They need to turn around and start speaking to each other. PTAs are one great thing to. There at Fort Bliss, they can open up a space, a gymnasium, where we can all meet together and talk about this. Thank you. 30 seconds.
All right, we will now move on to our next candidate, which is Mr. Gallinar. You have 30 seconds to respond.
Yes, I'm the only candidate that has a robust public participation, includes an open door policy at City Hall, making sure that people have access to the mayor. Let's make sure we're moving council meetings to the evening so that working people that have to work during the day can access city council in the afternoons and in the evenings. Make sure that we are
15 seconds.
Sure that we are also creating city council meetings in different parts of the city. And then finally, I'm the only candidate that has proposed that I would make my calendar available so that people know who I am meeting with and also whether or not they have contributed to my campaign. Thank you.
All right, and our last speaker for that question will be Mr. Zelsdorf. You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, so 3 things, right? The district projects would definitely involve everybody within those districts for what they need in that district. Number 2, no more executive sessions. I can't stand that they take the public's opinion and then they go and make their decision behind some locked door, with whoever they're listening to. And number 3, I want to make departments. I want to pick up the attrition rate to get more of our citizens within the departments to have more of an idea of how the city works. Thank you.
All right. We will now move on to our next audience question.
This question comes from Graciela Blandon, and it states, candidates often talk about growth and development in El Paso. I'd like to know what each of them mean by this. What sort of growth are they referring to? Collaborations, expansion, and how will that impact our existing neighborhoods and barrios?
Okay, so for this question, we will begin with Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez, you have 1 minute.
Wow, growth and expansion. That's a good idea to use what we have out of the schools because the ideas that are coming in that's going nationwide, especially throughout our state of Texas. Texas is never fallen when it comes down to putting great things together. If we can implement the ideas of what comes out of Houston and Dallas, Texas, and they not forget about us, that we're just a little bitty city out there in the Southwest, We can turn around and do great things. There's NMSU when it comes down to getting an MSU and UTEP put together to how they can combine their ideas together to making the Southwest better for the both of us because we share I-10 and along with I-25. Now, these are things that we can use. I have one good plan when it comes down to El Paso, Texas. Instead of demolishing the buildings, putting things together there. And I'll explain later at a later time because my time is ended. Thank you.
All right, our next candidate speaking will be Mr. Gallinar. You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I have talked about this extensively. As an urban planner, I study cities for a living. Listen, we have to stop sprawling out into the fringes of the city. It's too expensive, and it's hurting our environment. What I mean by growth and development means putting resources back into existing neighborhoods, making sure that we are fixing parks, fixing streets, making sure that we have hike and bike trails within our what we call legacy neighborhoods, right? Where many El Pasoans first achieved the American dream, but have been dilapidated and have been let go by over the past several years. And so we need to invest into existing neighborhoods, stop growing in the outskirts.
Okay, and our last speaker for that question will be Ms. Carbajal. You have 30 seconds.
So the main thing is I want growth to be fair and I want it to be sustainable. So the main thing is climate change. We cannot grow if we do not address the problems that we have with our air pollution or the scarcity of our water. We know that El Paso Electric consumes large amounts of water for their natural gas-powered facility. So we need to move into solar energy. And the second thing is housing. I worked a lot in the barrios, in the Chamizal, in Segundo Barrio, and in Duranguito, and I know that when we gentrify, we're pushing people out. When we invest in communities, we're helping people rise. And that's the focus of my campaign, is to make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind and that we're not destroying our history in the name of progress.
Okay, moving on to our fourth question. We will begin with Mr. Gallinar this time.
I don't think I got to answer that one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Okay, Mr. Zelsdorf, sorry. You have 30 seconds to respond.
So for growth and expansion, I think for growth, we need to start thinking outside the box. We need to start listening to those that are fresh out of college, bring their plans in and work with them. We definitely need to move towards a more sustainable city, and that is going to include renewable energy. As far as what we've seen from the pandemic, while it's very hard right now, it is kind of small, right? And we could have a war or even a worse outbreak, and that would really set us back. So we really need to start preparing our city for what the future holds. And I think that the expansion will just come naturally.
Okay, so now we will move on to our fourth question. I apologize. Victor or Andrea, do you guys want to read it? Okay.
So this next question is from Andres Carillo. What is your plan to help essential workers like Farm Workers Center in El Paso?
Yeah, great question. So listen, we have a lot of essential workers, including the farm workers in El Paso, right? We need to make sure that again, I've said this before, let's make sure first and foremost that we're fighting for a livable wage of $15 an hour. Essential workers also for me include teachers, school administrators, anyone that is on the front lines of this COVID pandemic. And we need to make sure again that we are leading with science, make sure that we have a mayor that's going to provide all the resources necessary to make sure we get out of COVID in the most safe and manner that we can. The safety and well-being of El Pasoans should be number one when it comes to COVID. And then finally, again, let's make sure that we have a city hall that is going to invite to the table to make sure that we make decisions about the future of our city, whether it's the economy, whether it's the way that we utilize city resources, that people are invited to the table to make sure that they also have a chance to partake in that decision-making process. I think El Paso is a labor town. El Paso is full of blue-collar workers. Is that the time?
Yes.
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker will be Mr. Zelsdorf. Mr. Zelsdorf, you have 30 seconds.
I think COVID really showed us a lot of weaknesses within our economy. So we need to take a look at what's been going on this last year and really, respond that way. We also need to make our lives a little bit easier, within El Paso and, energy will definitely help us. We need to have a municipality-owned utility. Excuse me. Because there's no reason for us to have to stress out like this when we have solutions to fix that.
Okay, our next speaker will be Ms. Carbajal. Ms. Carbajal, you have 30 seconds.
I know as a legal aid attorney that our essential workers, who are low-wage workers, often are also the ones that have the least work site protections. They have the least information about safety, and this includes COVID. And so we need to make sure that we give them as much information about clusters as possible, and to give them PPE, to give them support to get through the pandemic. Many of them don't have paid sick leave. And so when we talk about tax incentives for jobs, that needs to be a part of the package always, for folks to have health care and paid sick leave, as well as wages that exceed the $15 an hour that we want. Thank you.
Okay, and finally, for this question, we have Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, you give me the question again? The question again?
Yes, so the question was, what is your plan to help essential workers like Farm Workers Center in El Paso?
I do believe that El Paso should not be behind when it comes down to being paid hourly wage where they can afford at least not just only to live, pay for their rent and their mortgage and to eat, but also their insurance when it comes down to medical insurance. I think it's very important that they're able to turn around and sustain enough money to turn around and bring up their children with it. El Paso should not be something that should be behind Dallas, Texas, or Houston. We should be able to be equal to them as well. After all, we are the same state. At one time, El Paso did get paid like that.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. So we have our fifth question.
What steps will you take to make sure our city recovers economically and health-wise from COVID-19?
So for this question, we will begin with Mr. Zelsdorf. Mr. Zelsdorf, you have 1 minute.
So again, I know I keep touching on my district projects, but that's really going to help us economically. This is not going to be where we hire a company to come in and they charge whatever they want to charge. No, this is going to be direct, independent contracts with El Pasoans, and so they're going to get paid very well. To come back from in a healthy way, we definitely need to promote our outdoor living a lot more. And at the same time, we need to just, like I said, learn from this pandemic and make corrections on how we provide PPE and sanitizing methods. Yeah, that's it.
All right, so our next candidate speaking will be Ms. Carbajal. Ms. Carbajal, you have 30 seconds to respond.
So the first thing we need to do is protect people's safety. We still have not beat COVID. And so we need to, first and foremost, address the issue of clusters, even if they're not publicly known. The city knows where they are, and the city needs to be targeting them to make sure that they have the proper PPE, sanitation, ventilation, etc., to make sure that their workers and the customers are kept safe. The second issue is economically, we have $119 million that need to be used to help people recover. The city has just spent $10 million on a single building, and vehicles from the CARES Act instead of putting that money to support people financially.
Okay, our next speaker will be Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez, you have 30 seconds.
Thank you. I would impose a COVID shutdown to those who are not exercising the conditions of what we have, because this is the first time for all of us, not only the city, the state, our nation, but even the world. I would advise that we turn around and we put on, we exercise the act that when we turn around and start looking at our employees, those in businesses, those in schools, that they're being checked out daily. It's not going to cost us much to turn around and see to it that we don't have to turn around and contaminate each other. Is that it? Thank you.
All right, and our last speaker for this question will be Mr. Gallinar. Mr. Gallinar, you have 30 seconds.
Yeah, listen, this mayor and this administration have done a terrible job. The mayor created a task force that included a lot of people from the West Side. It missed having people of color. It missed having people of health professionals. And so we need to make sure that if we're going to move forward with our economy, that we bring everyone to the table. That's number one. Number two, in terms of making us healthier, I have advocated for and will create a regional hike and bike trail that's going to make us healthier and happier by having us outdoors and inviting people to visit El Paso and money here locally. Thank you.
Okay, we will now move on to our sixth question. Andrea or Victor, I'm not sure which one.
All right. So this next question is from Giselle Lopez Estrada, and she asks, what is your stance on defunding the police?
Okay, so for this question, we will begin with 1 minute for Ms. Carbajal.
So the issue is, how do we use the money that goes into the most expensive ticket item in our budget? And it has to be to attack societal problems at the root, not just to police and punish them. And this includes first and foremost mental health. The city has been sued repeatedly over its abuse and excessive use of force on people who are having mental health crises. We know just from this summer that the crisis intervention team has failed people a number of times. And so we need to make that a priority, because officers we need to protect our officers who don't want to do that kind of work. And we need to really help people who are going through this crisis by really funding and supporting mental health diagnoses and treatments. And this includes people who are suicidal, people with schizophrenia, people with Alzheimer's and dementia. Almost all of us know someone who's been impacted. And so we need to be able to call 911 and make sure that they're safe and not in further danger. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker will be Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez, you have 30 seconds.
Okay, I agree. Along with that, the mental people in El Paso, which we have a whole lot of, needs to be addressed and taken care of. We need to come together, especially the police department and city council. They need to work together to turn around and bring in some of the hospitals that have dealt with this and have had experience in it. And they need to turn around and give us an idea of what's the best approach. A man doesn't have to turn around and get hit with a laser or hit with a beanbag or shot to death. There are other ways to turn around and address this issue. 30 seconds is okay.
Our next candidate speaking will be Mr. Gallinar. You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I have said this before. Public safety is not just about law and order. Public safety is also about having a great quality of life. So I would not defund the police, but I would also look to create an equitable budget. Right now, we're spending $157 million on our police department. I would like to take some of that money and reallocate it to arts and culture. For example, on public health, we spent $17 million, and this administration cut that shit down this last funding cycle. So we need to make sure that we are funding libraries, rec centers, parks, hike and bike trails, all things that make us healthier.
Okay, and our last speaker for this question will be Mr. Zelsdorf. You have 30 seconds.
So yes, I would definitely reshuffle the money within the police department. I don't know if anybody saw the news story about the alleged kidnapping, but if you saw the video, there was like 30 special ops police officers there with all their guns and all their riot gear and everything like that. Look, we have at least two massive federal government agencies here. We have Fort Bliss and Border Patrol. If anything ever happens, we're protected. We don't need a third army to patrol our streets. And we definitely need to increase the CIT members.
Okay, we will now move on to our seventh question.
How can a government balance between confidential ideas and transparency to the people?
Confidential idea?
Okay, I'm sorry. For that question, we will begin with Mr. Martinez. Mr. Martinez, you have 1 minute.
I don't think I understood that question.
Andrea, could you repeat the question?
What does that mean?
How can a government balance between confidential ideas and transparency to the people?
Okay, I worked with the United States government, okay, for 28 years. There are things that people are not supposed to know due to the fact for the security of the United States. If the government, you're talking here in El Paso, Texas, yes, I am for the people to understand what's going on. And it's very important. At least you know what steps to take, what roads to take, what to do and what not to do. Because it's all in the name of keeping you policed up for your own safety and security. Now, if this is the point of others understanding something that's not, how could I say not important? There are things that they shouldn't understand. I mean, there are things that they shouldn't get into. Takes a grave importance of keeping the city secure and safe. Because if somebody anticipates like August 3rd of what happened in Walmart, they're going to take us out. And the police department, the foremost, number one, we're going to protect you. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker will be Mr. Gallinar. You have 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think you're going to have to treat it on a case-by-case basis. I myself would always, or would often, want to be as transparent as possible. I have already called for making sure that my vote is online so that people know who I am meeting with and whether or not they have donated to my campaign. I will also have an open door policy at City Hall. I want to make sure that people are invited to the table. But, I can't, it's hard to answer the question generally or uniformly when there may be some instances in which we want to protect employees with the exception of the city manager whose evaluation should be made public.
Okay, and our last speaker for this question will be Ms. Carbajal. You have 30 seconds.
I mean, I think that there's some bright lines when we're talking about litigation, when we're talking about settlement discussions, public safety. I think the question to me is about sweetheart deals, right? Decisions are made in the back room in executive session where people show up and they wait hours to give public comment only to find out that the city council and the mayor already made up their mind. Clearly because they had discussions with other people prior to meeting with the public, prior to making that public vote. And so that's really what's at the heart of this question. And I think that we need to be as transparent as possible about all the decisions that we're making and to allow city council members to be able to speak as long as they need to on an issue, which is not allowed right now. They're maxed out at 10 minutes at a city council meeting per issue. Thank you.
Okay, and then Mr. Zelsdorf, yes, so sorry. You have 30 seconds to respond.
Thank you. If it has to deal with city funds, I think that should be brought up to the citizens. I mean, they need to know where their money is going. As far as safety matters, I mean, yeah, we're not going to tell everybody where, police officers are patrolling or anything like that. But this government needs to be transparency. We are taking taxpayers' money and using it, and they should know what it's being used for.
Okay, we will now move on to our final question from our audience.
All right, this is from Enrique Aguirre, and he asks, how do you plan on providing resources to students that don't have access to those resources like other students do?
Okay, so the first candidate to respond to this question will be Mr. Gallinar. You have 1 minute.
Yeah, great question. Listen, I was a non-traditional student. Many people have heard me tell the story. I started at community college utilizing the Pell Grant from the federal government. I then went on to UTEP. And so in terms of being one of these underprivileged or non-traditional students, I have had that example in my life. I've been very blessed and very lucky. But we need to make sure, that's a great question, let's make sure that we are providing, for example, job training and all of the plans that I have laid out. I have about 7 plans on our website, from climate change to public participation to parks and open space. Every single one of those plans includes a youth participation component. So I want to make sure that every single youth that wants to be involved in government, that wants to be involved in their community, that wants to make a difference in their city, has a room at the table. Again, I invite people to go to my website, carlosformayor.com. We need to make sure that this city is as open and as inviting to everyone, but especially young students that need a little bit of help to make sure they are successful. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker will be Mr. Zelsdorf. You have 30 seconds.
So I'll just start now. Right now, there's 44 states in America that are applying for broadband across the state. Texas is not one of them. So please contact our Representative Rodriguez and ask him to start that process, because all we have to do is come up with a plan as a state, and then our status will just jump up. So that's one right there.
Okay, our next speaker will be Ms. Carbajal. You have 30 seconds.
So our campaign proposed a free citywide Wi-Fi, which would help students across the city. And we want to, of course, pay for that by using community college, by using UTEP and other resources, so that the city's not paying for that all on our own. I would also, because of my relationships with the community, tie them into things like legal aid. Like when the pandemic hit and UTEP was threatening to evict students, a lot of people contacted us. We needed to be able to rise to that occasion and to help them if that was the case. And then I want to fight for public transportation that is free for everyone as well.
Okay, and our final speaker for this question will be Mr. Martinez. You have 30 seconds.
Listen, the people who have the answer to this, who can help out our students, really, is the actual education people that give out that education, UTEP and community college. How is it that we can pay these guys so much money? I'm talking about so much money that they can't even help out their own students. When I attended community college, the first thing that happened to 10 of us, United States veterans, as we were studying, all of a sudden we couldn't understand what the professor was actually trying to say.
Okay. And I believe that concludes the town hall part of our debate. Thank you to the audience for submitting questions. So I think, are we taking a short break before the closing statements, Victor? No? Okay. So we will now proceed right into the closing statements. So the candidates will each have 1 minute for their closing statements. The order for closing, just to remind everyone, is Mr. Martinez, Mr. Gallinar, Ms. Carbajal, and Mr. Zelsdorf. So we will begin with 1 minute for Mr. Martinez.
Okay, first thing I'd like to say is thank you very much for inviting all of us here. We fill in the blank. I wish we fill in more minutes, but that's not so. When it comes down to holding on an office like this is the highest that it can be, you need more time to explain to the people the importance of that office. 30 seconds is like opening up a box of Cracker Jacks, but it's not opening up the hearts and the minds of those who are listening, where you can come in with good answers. As I said here, we need to understand what we can do with together. But it almost feels like I'm turning around making a bid, trying to make something happen real quick and sold to that person.
15 seconds.
We need more time. Thank you.
Okay, our next speaker will be Mr. Gallinar.
Yeah, so again, thank you for the invitation to speak with you all tonight. Listen, folks, the last 8 years should have been some of our city's best, but instead we have more people leaving El Paso than any other city in the United States. We have 54% of our families on the verge of poverty, and our wages are stagnant. And I'm sorry that I didn't get a chance to speak to the students, all of you, and get to know you collectively. But let me tell you this. All of you, without a doubt, or many of you without a doubt, are looking to go out of town to college, whether it's Austin, San Antonio, Phoenix, San Diego, Tucson, whatever that city may be. And history has shown us that many of you will not be coming back. We are not creating the kind of city that you deserve. We are not creating the kind of city that my 2 children, Olivia and Joaquin, deserve. That every child in El Paso should be given a chance to thrive and be successful in El Paso. And so we need to, again, fight for minimum wage of $15 an hour. Let's make sure that we are doing solar and renewable energy and leading on climate change. Let's make sure we are doing high-tech manufacturing so UTEP engineers can make money in El Paso. Thank you again for having me. Really appreciate it.
Okay, our next speaker will be Ms. Carbajal for 1 minute.
So I left El Paso twice, and I came back, and I came back to a job that is part of a union that has paid sick leave, that has student loan repayments, and has increased my salary almost every year. That's the kind of city that I want to fight for. But I also want to make sure that all of our plans are asking these really important questions: who benefits, who is hurt, who is left out, and who is paying for it. We have had over 20 years of city administrations that don't really care about who's being left out or who's being hurt. And that is why I'm running for office. I'm running for office because I am tired of people like my clients who have built this city being ignored. I'm tired of our history being erased. I'm tired of our environment being taken for granted. That is a kind of city that I'm willing to fight for. And what has really pushed me to run is the fact that there are so many young people who are clamoring for a city that is progressive in every possible way. And we have seen this summer, we've seen it through Duranguito, that people really love who they are, and they're not willing to sell out for a promise that's going to prove vacant. Thank you.
All right, and our last candidate to share his closing statement will be Mr. Zelsdorf. You have 1 minute.
I think it shows a lot that the incumbent mayor is not here and the past mayor is not here. So, the other three candidates with me tonight, I think we have a city in our best interest, and that's what I want to do. I want to build our city from within. I want to stop being the West Texas town that keeps getting ran over by the rancher or the oil tycoon. We need to stand up as a city, as ourselves, and really move our city in the direction that we want to go, not just the wealthy contractors and wealthy developers. They get wealthy by not being, by really taking advantage of wherever they can. So we need to make sure that we're building our city the way we want it and in the direction that we want it. And that's what I want to bring to the table.
All right, thank you so much to all of our candidates. We would just now like to share a closing from our part.
This concludes the We Fill in the Blanks El Paso mayoral debate. This debate would not have been possible without the help and commitment from all of you watching at home. We would like to thank the candidates and their teams, the tech crew, and everyone involved in this event for helping and make it possible. With the unprecedented times we are living and the outbreak of COVID-19, it may seem as though we are limited by our greatest fears to move forward into our better tomorrows. Yet what we will take from this is far greater than anything we have ever faced. In the middle of difficulty will always lie opportunity, and it is people like you who will allow for We Fill in the Blank to contribute to the border community. We would like to remind everyone at home that early voting begins October 13th, next Tuesday. And the election will take place on Tuesday, November 3rd. For more information on where and when to vote, please visit epcountyvotes.com. Once again, that is epcountyvotes.com. We encourage each of you to cast your ballot because your vote is your voice. Be sure to follow on Twitter using the handle @WeFitB. Thank you all for tuning in, and we thank all the candidates once again, and have a good evening.